Hey, all you growers out there. Welcome back to my channel. This is Garden State Growing. I am Eric. Today I'm going to be transplanting my tomato plants into bigger pots. Actually, I'm going to be putting them into solo cups, 16-ounce clear solo cups to be specific. There is a reason for that, and I will bring that up in a future video. But right now, before we go out there and I show you how I transplant my tomatoes, let's talk a little bit about transplant shock. Okay, transplant shock is something that happens to your plants basically when they're sad because you move them from one home to another home. Now, this is very traumatic to a plant and they do not like being transplanted. And a lot of times it will stunt their growth and slow their growth down. And actually, you'll lose that time that you were growing these plants inside to them being stunted because of transplant shock. So here are my 7 tips to avoid transplant shock. Okay, first of all, find out when your frost date is. Tomatoes, like anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks before the last frost date. Don't plant too early. If your plants overgrow the cell size that they're in right now and you're not ready to transplant, or you don't have the room to transplant, or the weather outside hasn't changed enough yet for you to transplant, you're going to stress them out just by keeping them in those little cups. Tip number 2 is pick an appropriate size pot to transplant in. I find that the 16-ounce solo cups are perfect for this. You don't have to go too big and they're not too small. I'm only going to have to transplant them this one time before I get ready to put them outside in the dirt. Tip number 3, roots do not like light and they do not like air. So make sure that when you're set up and ready to go, you have everything organized around you so that when it comes time to pulling these plants out of their small little seedling cells and put into a bigger cup or a bigger pot, you don't expose them to excessive amounts of light and air. Okay? Tip number 4. All right, this is a big one. Bring your soil up to room temperature. Bring your soil up to the temperature that they've been in right now. I highly recommend above 50 degrees soil temperature. Anything lower than that, 45 degrees, you're pushing it. But if your seedling has been sitting there in your greenhouse or inside and you've been growing it, and all of a sudden you put it into soil that's been outside in 35-degree weather, you're going to cause transplant shock to your plant. There, tip number 5. Anywhere between 2 weeks and a week before I know that I'm going to be transplanting, I start adding nutrients to my water when I'm watering my transplants. Just use Dr. Earth's Pure Gold. It's a 111. That's all I really need at this point. This is just going to get them used to having a little bit of nutrient uptake. And that nutrient uptake is going to help that plant be healthier when you put it into the new pot. Tip number 6 is I always pre-moisten my soil. I find it very difficult to get a very consistent moisture level or watering content in the soil, if I plant it in dry. Not only that, but your plants will not like to go into dry soil. It could cause shock. So pre-moisten your soil first. After you've transplanted your plants, keep them out of direct sunlight. They are not going to like it. It's going to hurt them. At least for 2 to 3 days, I keep them out of direct sunlight, and then I just put them in a shady spot or somewhere that gets only a couple hours of sun a day, and I help them recuperate, become more adjusted to the new soil, to the new environment, to the new cup sizes that you're putting them in. And so that's my 7 tips that I give to you about transplanting to help avoid transplant shock. You're not going to always be able to avoid it, but you can try to mitigate it as best as you can. So let me get you out to that greenhouse and I'll show you how I've been transplanting my tomatoes. All right, guys, here we have it. I mixed up my soil base. Sorry you didn't get to see that, but basically I just put 40 quarts of potting mix or raised bed mix, about 1/3 of a bag of peat moss, 4 cups of vermiculite, 4 cups of worm castings, 3 cups of coop poop chicken manure,
2.5 pounds or half a bag of cow manure, and about 3 gallons of water. And I use the usual dosage for gallons per liquid for the Dr. Earth's Pure Gold 111 organic fertilizer. In addition to fish emulsion, I use about 3 tablespoons of that for all of this here. All right, so it's at 6. Tomatoes like a good, 6 to 7, 7.5 on the alkalinity scale. All right, everyone, we're in my greenhouse. It is hot and it is muggy in here. It's been raining all day, but it's still about 65 degrees outside. So we're gonna up pot most of my tomato plants today, and I see that there is quite a few other different types of plants. So let me bring you along and show you what I do to up plant. First of all, I like to up plant in these large clear cups. I'll show you the reason why in a later video, but for now, just take it for granted that I have a good reason for doing these clear cups. And I'm going to take a drill with a 1/4 inch drill bit on it and just about 4 holes in each cup. I just use the drill to go through about 8 cups at once. All right, let's start with this tray here. All right, I got my little bowl of soil that I mixed up, part compost, worm castings, chicken manure, cow manure. All right. All right, so let's start with these. I have the Tiny Tim on the right, and I have the Wapsinopscon Peach tomato on the left. Let me bring you in here, show you. So what I'm gonna do with my indeterminate tomatoes, they kind of grew together, which is okay. All right, so these are my peach tomatoes, and I have to pick out one that I like the most. And these two in the middle are a little taller, but they have a little leaf wear on them. I think I like this one here. It's got better branches on it. It does have a little leaf wear on that though. Actually, let me start with the smallest. So I'm gonna thin these down to 1 plant. I'm gonna take this one off. And I think I'm gonna go, yep, I'm gonna go with this single one right here. I'm just gonna dig a hole in the middle. And if you see, I only filled it up to about this line here because I want to show, actually, I'm gonna pour some of this out because I want to try to measure out. What I'm gonna do with this tomato is I'm gonna bury it right up to where that bottom leaf was and just add some soil around it.
The one thing that's really nice about planting tomatoes is you can bury these stems deep into the ground. Anywhere there is stem, they have these little hairs on the side, they're going to grow roots from. So it is
Back
very
it down a little
advantageous
bit.
to You clip off the bottom 2 set of leaves and then bury down as deep, or you could even go deeper than where those 2 leaves were, and it will run new roots.
Now, wherever that stem touches the dirt or the soil going around here, it's going to grow roots out of, and you're going to get a much better tomato plant out of that. So this was the Wisconsin peach. Make sure I label this. Or, I'm sorry, it's not Wisconsin, it's Whip, Sip, and Con, whatever that is. Peach, tomato. I'm going to stick that tag in there, put this aside, and I'm going to do the rest of them. Tomatoes, my indeterminate tomatoes, I basically snipped off the bottom leaves. I picked the one that was the healthiest to me, and I buried it as deep as I possibly could. All these little hairs that are along the side of the tomato here, all these little hairs that are aside the tomato here, they're all going to turn into their own little roots, and they're going to root deeper. It's going to establish the plant a lot better, and you're going to have a much more healthier tomato plant with a lot more fruit on it. Bury the roots.
All right, everyone, this is the perfect time to talk about when it is time
So
to
let's
transplant
take
your
this
plants. When you find yourself having to water your plants every single day, and the next day you go out there and the tray is still very light,
Same
they've
thing
taken up
with the
all the water, it is
tomatoes,
time
the
to
peach
move them
tomatoes.
into a bigger pot.
I am going to snip off the ones that aren't doing as good. So that means this one goes bye-bye, this one goes bye-bye, this one goes bye-bye, and this little leaf right here is going to go bye-bye. And that is my determinate, like that. What is the difference between an indeterminate and a determinate tomato? Well, the indeterminate tomato will keep on growing and produce tomatoes the entire season, when the determinate tomato has a determinate height, size, and production. Clean off those leaves. Of the tomato plant, and once it produces its fruit, it produces it, you harvest it, you're done, it's gone. So let me do the rest of these, and I'm just going to keep on moving along because I've got a lot to do. I can't make commentary on everything, so let me keep on moving along. I'll bring you back and I'll show you what I've done.
I would like to tell you mine and my street. I would like to go with you into the street. Please don't deny your love makes me feel alive. Love, love, love. I wanna be strong, strong, strong. We're doing wrong, 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 but I'll fix it, fix it. Love, love, love. I wanna be strong, strong, strong. We're doing wrong, 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 but I'll try to change it.
All right, everyone, I just want to show you what I do to transplant these. Now, remember the guidelines that I said in the beginning of the video? Pre-moisten the soil, whatever type you're going to be using, and let it come up to room temperature, or at least the same temperature that you've been keeping your plants at. All right, so right here I have the Sheboygan tomato, which is an indeterminate tomato, and I also have the alpaca tomato. I'm just going to show you how I choose which ones I'm going to keep and which ones go to the garbage bin. Take my 16-ounce cup, put an inch or two of soil at the bottom. Very, very, very gently. You can either push it out from underneath, or you can just wiggle it out using the stems. Now, there are people that will separate this root ball and try to plant both of these plants, and it can be done.
but I find that it causes too much stress and shock to the plant. So I don't like it. What I'd rather do is just overseed and grow more than I need and then thin my plants out later. So this is my Sheboygan tomato. I'm just looking at girth of stem, and the one here is a little bit thicker. They're about the same at the bottom, but then as this one goes up, it becomes much thicker. It has more leaves on it. The leaves look healthier. So this one is going to go bye-bye. Then I'm going to take these bottom two leaves, and they're gone. All right. So now I'm just going to take this whole plant, stuff it down in the hole, and now let me pull it out and show you real quick. Yeah, you can see that. See all of these hairs? Everywhere there is a hair, a root is going to grow out of this. That's why I have at least 2 or 3 inches, no leaves, that I'm going to bury deep into the dirt or soil. My mistake. I try to not mess with the roots as much as possible. I don't try to separate them. I don't try to loosen them up. I literally do not want to touch those roots as little as possible. But also the stem, when I am touching the stem, I want to be as gentle as possible. I don't want to accidentally crush that stem. And I'm just going to give it a nice little pack down. I'm not going to force anything. And take my label, Sheboygan, love that word. Put it in there. And now let me show you up top. All right, so I have roughly half of all my tomatoes. That whole tray is tomatoes. That other half of the tray is tomatoes. These are all tomatoes, a ton of plants, as you can see. Now, watering, I will water these from the top one time. Right now, when I first transplanted them, I'm going to water from the top. After that, I'm going to bottom water. If you could see into this tray, I have like 1/4 of an inch of water at the bottom of the tray. I have holes in the bottom of these cups, and it's going to encourage the roots to go down to find that water. The only reason why I'm watering from the top on this one, on these, when I first plant them, is because I want to get rid of any air gaps that may have. If there is air gaps, your roots will die off. It's called self-pruning. So that pre-moisten your soil, bring it up to temperature, thin them out, plant them deep, water from the top one time, then water from the bottom. And the last step I'm going to do after I water them, as you can see, I got some Romanesca broccoli in there, some tomatillos as well. My last step is I'm gonna sprinkle some perlite on top, and this is just gonna act like a mulch, and it's gonna help keep the moisture in. So let me get back to it.
I keep a photograph in which we were in love, caught in your eyes, waiting for the sunrise. I barely even knew who you were. What did you do? I didn't care, 'cause you were perfect, I swear.
All right, all you growers, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it, whether you're a new gardener, a beginner gardener, or a more experienced gardener. If there's one tip that I gave you in this video that helps you get a new harvest, that is fantastic. Please, everyone, have a great night. Be safe out there. Keep yourself healthy if you can. And I'll see you on the next video. Coming up soon is going to be planting potatoes a couple different ways, and me transplanting other plants that are not my tomatoes. So have a great evening.